On today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, Guillermo del Toro has added two-time Academy Award winner Christoph Waltz to his new Frankenstein movie. Also, Marvel's Agatha series, we've got a new synopsis for it so we know what it's all about. And kind of a late release date we're getting. Patrick Stewart has revealed the three major conditions he gave to return to Star Trek. We're going to go over those and discuss if they were reasonable or not. Also, the Marvel's Ironheart has been pushed all the way into 2025. The Fantastic Four director, Matt Shakman, has basically now confirmed that the casting for Fantastic Four is done. They just can't let us know who it is quite yet. And the new Daredevil series is coming out on Disney+. They've released a new synopsis as well that gives us some more insight into the new show. That and a whole bunch more. The John Campea Show podcast starts right now. Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show podcast, coming to you from right here in our quaint little studio, brought to you in part by our friends at Mint Mobile. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news, TV and streaming, and all sorts of good stuff. Not just giving you our opinions, but giving you some background, history, and context so you guys can form your own well-informed opinions, whether the same or even a little bit different than ours. Joining me in studio today, we've got Ray Ora.
Hello.
Jonathan Voico's here.
Hey.
Robert Meyer Burnett is here today, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Every time.
And most importantly, you guys are here today. Thanks for being here and making the show part of your day. Gonna let you know, yeah, you've never seen me wear this. I'm not gonna say what or by who or where, but a certain favorite celebrity of mine happened to like something with me on the internet yesterday, and I had to go around and dig out this shirt just because I'm not professional. I'm just a big fanboy geek boy. But anyway, with that all down, guys, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's dive right into it, shall we? And we're going to start off with this. You know, Disney's Little Mermaid, the live action one that just came out into theaters, and it was a real slow start. I mean, it was a really slow start, but it had human legs and it kept going and going and going. It eventually crossed over the $500 million mark, I believe, and then was really big. It continues to this day to be really big on streaming. It kind of turned things around. Now, Halle Bailey was a revelation in the movie. She was absolutely fantastic in it. Her singing is, as far as being on movie screens go, her singing is world freaking class. It's really good. And so there was talk about maybe one of the songs getting some Oscar consideration, maybe. Well, there's a report that's been going around that you can find on a plethora of websites like this one that have been suggesting that Disney has pulled that song from consideration for the Oscars because they're saying because she's pregnant. And that is the topic of today's Mint Mobile hotline question of the day. Listen, if you guys have a topic or a question for our show and you'd like to hear your voice on it, go ahead and call our Mint Mobile hotline anytime 24/7 at 951-268-4259. And again, this is about the Little Mermaid stuff. Check it out.
Hey, John, this is Tyler. I was just reading some news and I saw that Halle Bailey might be out of the running for Oscar chances for her song from the Disney movie Little Mermaid, and Disney has now decided to take her out of the running for being pregnant. And if this is true, which it looks like it is because a lot of newsstands are taking it, I'm about done with Disney, and it's very, very idiotic. Thank you for taking my question. Have a great day.
All right, Tyler, thanks a lot for calling that in. Wow, there's so much to go over here. Okay, so first of all, I hadn't even heard of this until you mentioned it. And then, so I went online and say, is anybody saying it's all over the place? It's all over the place. That, let me rephrase. It's all over the place except for real news outlets. No real news outlets are talking about this. But basically, the gist of the report is that because Halle Bailey's pregnant, and by the way, I don't even know that there's any confirmation that she's pregnant, but because she's pregnant, Disney said, pregnancy does not fit our corporate brand.
How uncouth.
We do not condone pregnancy, and therefore we would be embarrassed, these reports go, to have her on stage at the Oscars with the big plumpy belly.
I mean, do you know what you have to do to get pregnant?
Yeah, don't you know what I have to do? Birds, storks, come flying through your window, according to Disney. And it's like, this is not whatever. And so, she can't perform the song there. And basically what a lot of these sites are saying is, well, if she's pregnant, she won't be able to get on stage at the Oscars and perform the song. There's a few things we need to clear up. Number one, there is no legitimate news site claiming that this is the case. Number two, and this is one of the big misconceptions here, there is no rule in the Academy that says if your song, the only way your song is allowed to be nominated is if the person who sang the song in the movie shows up to the Academy Awards and performs that song on stage. There is no such rule.
The performer isn't even nominated in the category.
Unless the performer is the person who actually wrote the song.
Well, that's true.
So Eminem has his Academy Award, right? But this wouldn't even be Halle Bailey's award. She did not write the song.
No.
She's just a singer. She does. So if, for argument's sake, just so you know, if this song does get nominated at the Academy Awards, if it does, and it wins, Halle Bailey does not have an Oscar. It's not her song. It goes to the songwriters. That's who gets the award. At any rate, but even that being the case, you got to understand there is no such rule that people are making up that the performer has to be there. So look, whether or not Disney submits this particular song for consideration in the Oscars, and by the way, just because they submit for consideration does not mean it'll get a nomination. That's up to the Academy to decide. But if for whatever reason Disney decides not to submit the song, I can guarantee you it has nothing to do with the possibility that the young lady who sang the song is pregnant, because there is no such rule that she would have to be. We've seen many times at the Academy Awards where somebody else stands in and sings the song and stuff like that. It's not a really big deal. Anyway, Rob, you heard about this report. What is your response to this?
First of all, Halle Bailey, can I just say, did a fantastic job in this movie. I caught up with it finally. I can understand everybody's objections or whatever. I think the movie was too long. But other than that, I thought she was fantastic as Ariel, and she made a great mermaid. And her singing voice is angelic, and she did a fine job. That said, if she couldn't perform the song at the Academy Awards and it was nominated, the producers of the Oscars would, get Beyonce to sing it.
Yeah.
They would find somebody that has real marquee value. Not that Halle Bailey doesn't, but how many times in Oscar history has another performer sung at the Academy Awards a nominated song? I'll tell you, a lot. This is the dumbest kind of news that gets picked up, and that people believe it. It's this knee-jerk weird reaction that no one is more of a proponent than checking your sources than you are. You have always said, check the source. Check the source. What is the source? Like you said, there's no legitimate news outlets. And you know what I really object to about this? Let's say she is pregnant. Let's be happy for her and hope she has a very happy, healthy baby, and that they get to grow old together as mother and daughter, or mother and son, or whomever. And why not leave it at that?
Yeah. By the way, Rihanna just recently performed at the Super Bowl pregnant.
Oh, and very pregnant.
Very pregnant.
And by the way, John, did that affect her performance?
Not at all. It was
not
pretty
at
damn
all.
good.
She belted it out.
Anyway, there's that. And so some people might want to ask, well, like, if this isn't true, why cover it? We'll cover it because it's being reported all over the place. I feel we should bring it up to you guys, especially when some of you guys are calling in or writing in about it, to let you guys know this is not true. Now, listen, whether or not Disney actually puts it up to be nominated, that's another thing altogether. But if they don't, it's not because Bailey's pregnant. Just be clear about that. All right. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? Guillermo del Toro is one of the most celebrated directors out there, and it's just come to light that he has added two-time Academy Award winner Christoph Waltz. Of course, he won his 2 Academy Awards in 2 Quentin Tarantino films. He won it in Django and Inglourious Bastards. He was brilliant in both of those. And he has been added to Guillermo del Toro's upcoming movie, Frankenstein, a movie that, by the way, already has a pretty damn impressive lineup of talent in it. This comes to us from the folks over at Joe Blow, who write the following. I'm doing Frankenstein. Guillermo del Toro said, "We're working on it. We're starting shooting in February, and it's a movie I've been wanting to do for 50 years since I saw the first Frankenstein. I had an epiphany, and it's basically a movie that required a lot of growth and a lot of tools that I couldn't have done 10 to 20 years ago. Now I'm brave or crazy enough to, or something, and we're going to tackle it. It's Oscar Isaac, Andrew Garfield, Christoph Waltz, Mia Goth, and we're working on it." Look at that lineup again. Oscar Isaac, Andrew Garfield, Mia Goth, who's been hot lately, especially because of X and things like that, and the great Christoph Waltz, and they're working on it. Rob, Guillermo del Toro, not everything he's ever made has been a complete masterpiece, but I think the term that gets overused a lot, visionary director, is one that completely applies to someone like Guillermo del Toro. He is a visionary director. The fact that he's tackling Frankenstein is really interesting. There's kind of a Frankenstein movie coming out now with Poor Dears, is that what it's called? Poor Things or Poor Dears?
Yes.
Something like
Poor
that.
Things, yeah.
Poor Things with Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo. That looks really good. But for him to tackle this, what a cast. What do you think about this?
Dude, like you said, I mean, I've been a fan of Guillermo del Toro's all the way back to Kronos, which was, I think, his first feature, the first movie that I remember seeing that he did. And, you know, even when he makes movies that I don't love, like Crimson Peak, they're so sumptuous to watch that the experience of seeing a Guillermo del Toro film, I mean, is always amazing. He never phones it in. And he makes masterpieces. Like, I thought Devil's Backbone was a masterpiece. I thought Pan's Labyrinth was a masterpiece. And, you know, there's an argument to be made, John, that Pacific Rim is the greatest movie ever made. I'm just saying. Just saying. I mean, it's got every Japanese giant robots, kaiju monsters, all. It was everything.
Why am I forgetting the name of this Sex with Fish Man movie?
Shape of Water.
Yeah.
What's that?
Shape of Water.
Shape of Water.
Which
is
the
Best Picture at the Academy Awards.
One Best Picture, and that was kind of his Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I was going to bring up that cast, and I would assume Christoph Waltz is playing Frankenstein's monster. That cast, and because there's a female in the lead, they might be combining Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Sign me up. I mean, if I could guarantee whatever we're going to see that is going to be a cinematic experience, one for the ages, and hello, Universal, planting your flag, starting up that dark universe the way it should have been started from the very beginning with Frankenstein, just like they did back in the day. Yo, I can't wait for this. I'm very excited. Guillermo del Toro, you go, my friend. You go.
Yeah, and with an already impressive cast, adding a guy like Christoph Waltz, which I mean, look, he did that horrible Three Musketeers movie. Remember where he played I think he played Cardinal Vishnu or something? And like that movie was horrible, but I would watch that movie simply because he was in it. I mean, I love Christoph Waltz.
And I think if you look at his face, he's a perfect person to play. I mean, remember, Kenneth Branagh made a Frankenstein movie and Robert De Niro played Frankenstein's monster. Lest we not forget that. I'm not kidding, by the way.
No, it's true.
All right. With that down, guys, let's move on to this, shall we? Ever since WandaVision came out, there has been rumors and whispers, and then officially it became a real thing that Agatha, which has gone by 18 different titles right now, it's called Agatha, the Darkhold Diaries, I believe. That's the latest incarnation of the title. It used to be House of Harkness, and then what was the other one?
Coven of Chaos.
Coven of Chaos, but they've landed on Darkhold Diaries, apparently. So that show's been coming, but when's it going to come? What's it kind of going to be the basic premise? Well, some new information's come out in the last couple of days about Agatha, which, I mean, with Catherine Hahn playing the role, this is one of these spin-off MCU shows that I'm actually really, really quite excited about because I love Catherine Hahn. I loved the character. I think there's a lot of cool things you could do with something like that. But when's it coming out? What's it even going to be about? These are questions that we're now starting to get some answers to. First of all, came a report that unfortunately we're going to have to wait a little bit longer than we all originally thought, because the new story coming out is that September of 2024. So we're going to have to wait another year for it, which really sucks. But between the strikes and the moving around and the shifting priorities within the MCU, it's caused kind of a little bit of an upheaval in the release schedule. So it sounds like September of 2024 is where they're aiming for right now. I mean, that could change again, but apparently right now we're a year away from it coming out. But what's really interesting is we got a little bit of a synopsis. This comes to us from the folks over at CBR, who wrote the following. Agatha on the U.S. Copyright Office public record system reads as follows for the new synopsis. In the first episode, we see Agatha Harkness, played by Kathryn Hahn, finally break out of a spell she has been trapped in. You guys will remember that's how WandaVision ended. She breaks out of a spell that she's been trapped in. She can't wait to go back to her old murderous ways, only to find that she is powerless. The only way forward for her is to embark on a perilous quest to get her powers back with the help of an unlikely friend or two. And by the way, that kind of piggybacks to one of her co-stars in Parks and Rec, Aubrey Plaza, is going to be in this as well. I have a feeling she's going to be one of these friends or two. So, first of all, I'm super excited for this show. There's not a lot of MCU stuff coming out on Disney Plus that I'm really excited about. This is something I am tremendously excited about. The whole idea that she has to go on some kind of a quest to regain her powers. Look, this is Disney. I'm going to go out on a limb. Nobody's told me this. I'm just going to take a wild guess. And I'm sure this is a wild guess many of you guys are thinking too. Along the journey to get her powers back, Agatha is going to discover that there's more to life than being evil. That she's probably going to help a puppy along the way and realize that there's more fulfillment in helping the good folks of whatever the name of the town is from WandaVision, East Town, West Town, Fuckboy, I don't know. It's going to be one of these towns, and she's going to come to some kind of an epiphany and end up, as they do with a lot of these villains, just like they did with Loki. You know, Loki, he goes through transformation. Maybe they'll do that with, I'm just taking a guess here, Rob, that Agatha is not going to end in the series as still a murderous villain. I don't, but you know what? I'll say this too. In WandaVision, she never really struck me as being pure evil. She did a couple of really nasty things, but I mean, I don't know. What do you think about the little synopsis we got, and where do you think they're going to go with this?
Well, just because I love Kathryn Hahn, I love the way she played that character. I think the show will be wildly entertaining if it's well written. I mean, I think that, you know, ultimately the disappointment we've all had with the MCU streaming shows, with maybe the exception of WandaVision, although I did like Captain America or Falcon and Winter Soldier, has been the writing. But I think with the performers here and adding Aubrey Plaza and Kathryn Hahn, the potential here is good.
Yeah.
And I think you might be right. I mean, at least she's an antagonist, not necessarily an evil villain, you know, and I could see this being I mean, they need to develop the supernatural. If you're going to bring in Blade, you've already got Man-Thing. We've already seen Werewolf by Night.
It's like they're going to do Blade.
Yeah, are we getting Blade? Are we?
I mean, they have really neglected. I mean, we've seen a snippet, but how does the supernatural fit into the MCU on a larger level? They've kind of not really explored that, and I'd like to see them do that, because remember how Mephisto was going to show up in WandaVision, that Mephisto was doing all of this?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, let's see Mephisto now, finally. I want to see Mephisto. Come on, just show up, man.
Maybe that's who she's going to try to go to get her powers back.
Or maybe Aubrey Plaza plays Death, who Thanos was in love with.
They already mentioned, there was a report that came out this weekend about the actual character name that Aubrey Plaza has, but who knows? Maybe that could be, you know, a secret identity that she's given, but nobody would know. In the reports about Aubrey Plaza, it said that it's a new character. Oh. And it had a name. The character just had like
right. Okay, yeah.
So
right.
We'll see where they go with that. I don't care. I'm really excited about this series. I just think it really sucks that we're going to have to wait for another year to actually get it. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? Patrick Stewart, in his new memoir that has just come out, I believe, or is about to come out, has kind of listed something interesting in it, in that he gave three very strict, solid conditions on him coming back to play Captain Picard again in the Star Trek universe. Now, of course, we had 3 seasons of Picard. I really enjoyed the first one. Kind of shaky on the second season. Third one was really solid. I just love the character. I love the character of Jean-Luc Picard. He's such a great antithesis of Captain James T. Kirk. Like, they're 2 Federation starship captains, but they represent completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And I always love that about the Picard character. Anyway, in the book, he laid out 3 strong reasons, which gives us some insight into how the series actually turned out. Now, this is coming to us from CBR, that's quoting out of the book, but it said this. Condition number 1, the series will not be based on a reunion of the Next Generation characters, Stewart said. I wanted it to have little or nothing to do with them. This was not at all a mark of disrespect for my beloved fellow actors. Rather, I simply felt it was essential to place Picard in an entirely new setting with entirely new characters. Perhaps Picard might encounter Riker or Dr. Crusher in the 2nd season, but such encounters were not to be the series' raison d'être, which basically means the main driving thing about it. On the second condition, Stewart added, Picard would no longer be serving in Starfleet, and he was not to wear any kind of uniform or badges. The third and final condition revealed after the show recently wrapped its run for its season 3 reads, the series would run for no more than 3 seasons. Now, he goes on to write about how when he laid those out, the writers of the show were not thrilled because that was not in line with, I guess they had. I guess the kind of intention was to do a little bit more of a Next Generation reunion right off the bat. They wanted Picard to still be a legendary admiral and still serving and all that kind of stuff. So they had to do a little bit of a dance to get around it. I'm sure some of the original concepts and ideas stayed in there. They just had to redress them up and all that kind of stuff. And you know what, Rob? When I first read this, because I love Sir Patrick. I think he's amazing. But when I first read this, I thought, should you really be laying out conditions? I mean, hey, listen, he's old enough now and has done enough. That's like, hey, listen, if you want me to come back, I'll come back, but I'm under no obligation to come back. So if I do, I want these particular conditions in there. So I get it. When you read what he kind of laid out to them, can you see how that completely played out in the series itself? And do you think they were reasonable things narratively for him to request for the character? Or do you kind of wish he maybe dropped 1 or 2 of those conditions? What do you think?
Well, to be honest, no. I mean, I think that they were reasonable conditions. I mean, I think that what he wanted to do coming off of something like Logan, where they took Professor X, and Professor X was this, Professor X is a very leader of the X-Men. He's very good. He's a good man. He's fighting for the rights of Homo superior to live with Homo sapiens and not destroy the world and all that. But he's a very sort of highfalutin, put him on a pedestal character. I think what Patrick Stewart wanted to do by coming back as Picard was to do what they did with Logan, but examine what is a life. Patrick Stewart playing a hero, a Teflon, like, of course, he was Locutus and all that, but he wanted to do something where there was a lot more nuance and a lot more, this character is not necessarily on a pedestal. He's at the end of his life. Let's give him something really interesting to do and interesting to play. And let's not make it contingent on, if we brought back all the characters, it would just be another episode of Next Generation. So I'd like to do something and explore different facets, because all actors want to do that. I want to grow. I want to take this character places that I couldn't in the 7 seasons of Next Generation and the 4 movies we made. So that is perfectly reasonable to me. I think what let him down was they couldn't get away from all of the, in the first season of Next Generation, they had, or of Picard, they've got a Borg cube and they've got all this stuff that was, and you bring back the synths and data. It was all about various threads of Next Generation, as opposed to being a story about what does a great hero do when they get older and where are they in their lives? Like, could they be a different kind of a person? And they tried to do that a little bit, but then they brought him back in. And then, of course, Terry Matalas, when he took over for the 3rd season as a showrunner, he just went full on and brought back all the characters, because clearly that's what the audience wanted to see. But I think if they came up with sort of an Ernest Hemingway Old Man and the Sea story that was completely removed from the past and put Picard front and center and did something entirely different with him, it could have been great.
I think it was great. Well, at least
I'm just saying that I wasn't. I'm just saying if they went in a totally different direction.
It's hard to, though, right? Like,
I know.
with a character like Picard, who is
because it's still Picard.
Yeah, exactly.
And people
yeah.
but it would have been really, because I really think that in Logan, and I really think that's why he asked for these things, you got to see a Patrick Stewart who was infirm. He couldn't control his
very
mental
different
powers,
Charles.
but it made him it gave him something to play.
Yeah.
And it gave him, as an actor, he really got to stretch with that character. And I think he wanted to do the same thing with Picard.
All right, guys, with that down, we still got to talk about Ironheart has been apparently pushed all the way out to 2025, according to reports. Fantastic Four has been cast, says the director. We just can't tell you who it is right now. Also, the new Daredevil series got a new synopsis, gives us a lot more insight into what this show is going to be, and it's a little bit weird. But before we get to those things, we're going to take just a quick second and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our friends at Vessi and BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Vessi. Now, you guys know I'm not exactly the most fashion conscious guy in the world, but I love a great pair of shoes that are comfortable and I can wear almost anywhere. And growing up in Canadian winters when my feet got wet a lot, waterproof would be nice too. Enter Vessi. They make the claim that they're not just fashionable and super comfortable, they're also waterproof. Now, you guys remember, when I got my first pair of Vessis, I put them to the ultimate waterproof test. I actually stuck my foot in my pool, my feet stayed dry, and the shoes stayed dry. Incredible. And they're the most comfortable pair of shoes I ever owned. Well, that made me want another pair. So I got another pair of Vessis that look great and just equal that world-class comfort that I got from that first pair of shoes. They are absolutely my favorite shoes that I've ever owned. Imagine your favorite sneaker style supercharged with waterproof technology and unmatched comfort. No matter how you like to stay active, Vessi has the shoes for you. Trail-ready high tops, effortless slip-ons, and classic court shoes, all with a waterproof twist. They are just as comfortable and stylish as your favorite sneakers, but even more versatile. So guys, if you're anything like me and you want the most comfortable pair of shoes that look great, that you can take out hiking, wear to work, go to the gym, or walk through the water and snow, go to vessi.com/Campea and get yourself a pair today. Go to vessi.com/Campea and get 15% off your order using the code Campea. Hey guys, we want to thank a sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. You guys know that I've been saying for a long time that it's time for us to start prioritizing mental health in our lives. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I've pointed this out many times, but we as adults know that we need to prioritize our physical health, and so we encourage each other and cheer each other on when we take steps for improving our physical health, like going to the gym. Well, it's time that we prioritize our mental health the same way. We need to encourage each other to take those steps and encourage ourselves to do that as well. So guys, take that step in prioritizing your mental health by going to BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Campea today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Vessi and BetterHelp for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's get on to this, shall we? It sounds like Marvel's Ironheart isn't coming out until 2025. Now, of course, in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, they introduced us to Ironheart. A young college student who apparently is as smart as Tony Stark was able to design and create her own Iron Man outfit, an Iron Man suit of armor. And now we knew in advance, like before Black Panther Wakanda Forever even came out, that they were going to give Ironheart her own show. That news was already out. We knew that going into it. So it was fairly important that they introduced the character well. And so we go into Black Panther Wakanda Forever, kind of looking forward to seeing how they're going to do it. And look, it's all subjective. We all feel differently. I don't think they did a very good job introducing the character, because the way they wrote her, which could have been a really interesting character, they just didn't write her in any way that made me all that interested. And again, I was lamenting to Rob before we even started the show. You guys have heard me cry about this before. Why does everything in Marvel ultimately have to be an Iron Man suit? Everybody has to have Iron Man suits, right? So, yeah, War Machine, but Rhodey had to have an Iron Man suit. And then Spider-Man isn't cool enough, so Spider-Man had to have an Iron Man suit. You know who's not cool? The Dora Milaje aren't cool. Are you freaking kidding me? No, you don't understand, John. The Dora Milaje aren't cool enough. They have to have Iron Man costumes too. They gotta have Iron Man armor. Nothing's cool to the kiddies today unless they have Iron Man armor. So we go with another derivative character with Ironheart. Now, Ironheart is in the comics. It's a relatively new comic book. So it's not like they got a lot of history or whatever with it. And this comes to us from the folks over at CBR who wrote this. Per the direct, Marvel recently fired a listing for Ironheart premiere with the U.S. Copyright Office, which seemingly reveals a debut date of September 3rd, 2025. So we got to wait a year for Agatha, and then you're going to have to wait another year for Ironheart. The registered date is listed as projected, and it could be an approximation, and it may shift around if necessary. However, the listing suggests Marvel doesn't plan to release Ironheart before the late summer of 2025. Neither Marvel Studios nor Disney have confirmed this date. All right. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, number one, there's not a lot of Disney Plus shows that I'm looking forward to. This certainly isn't one of them either. I just think they did a bad job. It's a story of three different takes, right? They introduced us to the character of Echo, right? In the Hawkeye series. Did not do a good job, and so I don't care about the show. They introduced us to the new character of Ironheart in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and I'm not looking forward to the show because I don't think they did a good job. However, they introduced us to Agatha in WandaVision, did a tremendous job writing that character, and so I'm super excited about Agatha. But I'll go one step further here, Rob. No one has told me this. This is pure speculation on my part. I don't think the show's going to happen. I really don't. Between Bob Iger coming out and saying, we need to cut back, we're oversaturated with Marvel stuff on Disney Plus. Between that, the pushback of the date, the not super positive response to the character itself and having kind of what I consider to be a weak launch. But hey, it's all subjective. Maybe there are a bunch of you guys watching that thought it was a great launch for the character. I thought it was a little bit weak, but that's just me. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I think there's a solid 60% chance this show doesn't happen at all. But anyway, Rob, what did you think about the introduction of the character in Black Panther Wakanda Forever? What do you think about this date move all the way to September of 2025? And what does that tell you about the possible future of the show?
Well, I think, look, Marvel did in Civil War when they introduced Black Panther, T'Chaka, that whole introduction of that character and the way Chad Boseman played him, brilliant. That character had a smashing debut in Civil War. We could not wait to see more Black Panther. That's the template. They gave us that template for how to introduce a character, make them integral to the plot of that film, and cast an actor that is irresistible in the role. So that's what we expect. And I think that as much as, I liked Wakanda Forever probably more than a lot of people did because it was an insurmountable task that Ryan Coogler had to take on. And I think he acquitted himself admirably and made a film that continues to be resonant and quite accomplished. That said, I found Ironheart to be shoehorned into that narrative. And not only that, but a shortcut of a character that was already sort of fully formed, that they just assume that we're going to love these characters, and they're not giving us the underpinning of a background or a reason to love these characters. I don't like the fact that the MCU is now just assuming that we're going to love all these new characters. They spent over 23 movies. They meticulously introduced each character and made us care through great writing. And in WandaVision too, there's a reason WandaVision now, we have a lot to compare it to, I think stands head and shoulders above any other Marvel streaming show. And it's not perfect. I don't think WandaVision is by any means perfect, but the characters like Agatha Harkness had screen time. We had to meet her, get to know her, experience her. Catherine Hahn, bringing a certain nuance to the role. We had hours to get to know that character and see her interact with two previously established characters. And to give us an Echo show where I like you, I was not impressed by how Echo was introduced in a less than impressive show. So you've got Hawkeye, which was a little lackluster, and you have a character that was also lackluster within a lackluster show. So, I would love to see Riri Williams introduced and made into a great character. But I have no interest in an Ironheart show because why should I have any interest in an Ironheart show?
To juxtapose that, staying in the world of Wakanda a little bit, look at how they introduced T'Challa in Winter Soldier, right? Or Civil War, I should say. Look how they introduced T'Challa in Civil War. We had never had him on screen before. But by the time that movie ended, we had a character that suffered loss. We got to see their conviction. We got a sense of their abilities, their personality, the world that he lived in. And he was just a secondary character in that movie. But it got us to the end of that movie and we were like, yes, give us more of this T'Challa character.
Yeah.
And they just haven't been able to do it. Now, listen, I said I don't think they're going to do the show ultimately. Now, if you look at this, you can bring up my screen here. This is from the set. I mean, they've already done a bunch of shooting, if not maybe even completed principal photography. They were getting a little bit of a look with some of the quote unquote green screen leggings with a practical iron top and all that kind of stuff. So they've already shot it, but I just have a feeling there's still a lot more money to be spent on this in post-production. And because of what Bob Iger said about diluting the product, that's why I'm saying I don't think they're actually going to put this on air. Again, I'm not saying it's a guarantee and nobody's told me that. This is just me taking a wild, baseless guess that I'm pulling straight out of my ass. It very well could get released. I just happen to think there's a really good chance they won't.
I tend to agree with you, and I really don't understand why we haven't seen the Dora Milaje. There's your show. I mean, Denai Guerrera, Okoye. I mean, you've got a peacekeeper force. We've seen the Dora Milaje interact on a global scale undercover in various films and now various shows. I'm like, why not give us that?
Who didn't get excited when they showed up in Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
We all did.
Everybody got excited when they.
I mean, and they've have a much better presence. They're much more developed, and there's a lot of. I mean, come on, give me a global secret agent show fronted by the Dora Milaje. That's like, hello, sign me up. You can make a new streaming service if that's the only show on it. I'll subscribe.
All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? One of the biggest stories amongst fans for the movie world right now is Fantastic Four, right? People have been crying and screaming and hollering for Disney and Marvel to get back Fantastic Four. They got them back. The fan casting, of course, has been, as intense, if not more so, than who's going to be the next James Bond and who's going to be the next Batman. Of course, a lot of people want John Krasinski in it. And then Kevin Feige said, okay, I don't know that he's actually going to be our ongoing Reed Richards, but here's a little gift to you fans. Here's John Krasinski and at least a multiverse version of Reed Richards. Some people still think he's going to be Reed Richards. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. We'll find that out. But one of the things that I've said for a bit is I believe the casting's already done. Despite all the other reports that says, they're still looking. I've said for a while, I believe the casting's done. I think it's been done for a while. Well, apparently, we were just speaking of WandaVision. WandaVision director, and now director of Fantastic Four, Matt Shakman. He's just made some comments that make it sound like, yeah, the casting is already done. But he just can't tell us who it is. Check this out. As one would expect, with a project of this size and scale, plus the marvel of it all, concrete information is hard to uncover. On the casting front, Shakman noted that with the SAG strike going on, it was impossible to announce anything or put a timescale on it. However, he did add that he was very excited to share the news with the fans and that there would be a plan in place to announce the casting as soon as the strike came to a successful conclusion for the actors. Let me read that last part again. He's very excited to share the news with fans and that there would be a plan in place to announce the casting as soon as the strike came to a successful conclusion for the actors. Now, there's something I want to point out, that nowhere in this story does Shakman actually say the words, yes, we have done the casting and we have our Fantastic Four, but I just can't tell you yet. But being somebody that has believed for a while they've already got their casting done, despite all the other reports and everything else that's going around, that's all just camouflage and everything. Remember, all the reports and rumors are going around about who's going to be the next Batman long after Ben Affleck had signed on the dotted line to be the Batman in Batman versus Superman, right? I believe that's the case. So when he says, we can't announce anything right now because of SAG, but I'm super excited to let you know about everything, give you all these announcements once the SAG strike is done. Rob, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about who's going to be Ben Grimm, who's going to be Reed Richards, who's going to be Sue Storm, who's going to be Johnny Storm, like all this kind of stuff. To me, this sounds pretty clear. It sounds like we just can't tell you who it is right now because we got an actor strike going on. We can't do all this kind of stuff. Plus, the Fantastic Four movie is still very far away. I mean, they could be sitting on this for even months more after the SAG strike is done. But it does sound to me like they've got their cast. Do you think they have their cast? And if yes, do you think it's any of the names we've already discussed, batted around, or do you think it's going to be kind of surprising us like right out of left field, like how Superman and Lois casting kind of went? What do you see?
I think, yes, they have cast this probably like you. I believe it was cast quite a while ago. Even before the actors strike, they just were sitting on that information before they could announce it. I don't necessarily think that it's who we might have thought in the past or what's been reported.
So you think it might not be any of the names that they've already mentioned?
It wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't any of those names and it was totally surprising. It wouldn't, not at all. Then again, maybe it would, but it's not. I tend to think it's going to surprise us. And I think, good. I'd rather have it be that way. And there's a reason why we don't know yet. They're going to announce it when they need to announce it. And look, there's nothing more than a great Fantastic Four movie that I would love to see. I love the Fantastic Four. The John Byrne run was a favorite in the 80s. I love Jonathan Hickman's run on Fantastic Four more recently. I'm a fan of this super team, and I would love to see them get their definitive movie because I don't think the Tim Story version cut it. I don't think the other two versions, the Corman version, yeah, and then later on the Josh Trank version, but that had problems anyway. I would love to see a great film, so I hope that we get the Marvel. Marvel has done an exceedingly well job. Is that right, Brammer? They've done a great job casting their characters.
They really have, yeah.
And I think whoever they give us, it's going to be a magical ensemble of 4 actors that really bring home that familial magic that the Fantastic Four needs at its core. I can't wait. I'm really hoping this movie's great.
See, I think to your point, there are 2 things that are true. Number 1, I think they're going to do a great job casting this. And number 2 is there's going to be a lot of complaining when they announce the cast. And that's a little bit fair because they're casting for roles we haven't seen yet. Like they know what their Reed Richards is going to be like. We don't. So I think a lot of people, when they announce Reed Richards, whoever it is going to complain a lot, very vocally, because it might not be the person to fit the Reed Richards in their head. But I think they're going to do a great job. Let me ask you this though. Chris and I were doing the show last week, and I kind of mentioned when a lot of people say Fantastic Four is going to be a $1 billion film. I have my doubts about it. And here's what my doubts were. I want to know what you have to say about this. Is that number 1, none of the previous Fantastic Four iterations came anywhere near that mark. Number 2, like I remember when we were at Collider and AMC, like we had to do a story about how the Fantastic Four comic books just got canceled because nobody reads them. They are the first family of comics, of comic book superheroes. But I want to know what you think about this. Does the Fantastic Four today still have enough relevance or popularity that it could have a big leg up on big success just because they're the Fantastic Four? Or is the Fantastic Four now more of a legacy name? I don't know. How do you see this working out?
I think it's a great question you're asking. And I think, honestly, it is a legacy name. There's no reason right now for any audience to get excited about the Fantastic Four. And I think in a way, maybe even Doctor Strange. I think they're going to do Doctor Strange numbers. Like this is a movie that's going to make
great.
It would be great. Late the high end of the 600 millions, if it's a good movie. I mean, this film. It's funny because they're the most known quantity of all the Marvel characters that haven't really been turned into something yet. I mean, so if it's done well, and if the cast is great, and if they come up with a great story, it's going to work. But I also see, because a Fantastic Four movie, we've now seen 4 different versions, and you can see exactly why they don't work.
Right.
So it's hard. This is not an easy thing to do because you don't make just one kick-ass hero. You have to make all 4 of these. Honestly, I just didn't believe who they cast, like in the Tim Story versions, it's not like they had bad actors. I just didn't believe them in the context of the movie that they'd made.
I will say I liked Michael Chiklis.
He was
Ben
great.
Grimm.
He was.
Yeah.
I loved him, but the
And
rest.
Evans' Johnny Storm had certain elements that went with it.
Yeah, it was. It all. They were great actors, but they didn't work. The whole movie didn't work for me. I just didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Whereas the MCU is already set up with the confines of the MCU are. So if it works, it will be great. But the potential of all the big Marvel, the guns in the Marvel universe, this one is the hardest one to wield, I think, correctly.
Yeah, but I think it gives us both a lot of confidence that
Yeah.
you and I really like WandaVision. The fact that they got Matt to come over and do it, he left a Star Wars movie
Yep.
to come do this.
Great
So-
ensemble cast potential here. He was good with the cast in WandaVision.
All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this. A lot of news about the MCU here today, including especially on Disney Plus, as apparently a new synopsis has just come out for Daredevil, the upcoming Disney Plus series. That's given us a much better idea about what the setting of the movie is going to be and kind of the direction that, not movie, but show, and kind of the direction that the show is going to take. Now, a bunch of news about Daredevil has come out recently. Obviously, we found out that there's not going to be any Foggy in the show. There's not going to be any Karen in the show, which upset a lot of people. And we finally got our official casting of Vanessa. They've recast the Vanessa character, all that kind of stuff. It's still a bit of a question. Is this actually like a Daredevil season 4? Is this actually the same Daredevil that we had in Netflix? I contend that it isn't. I think this is going to be a new iteration. But anyway, we're waiting for official word on that. But now apparently we've got a synopsis for where this show is going, and it's really kind of interesting. This comes to us from MovieWeb, who wrote the following, quoting the report that said this: Marvel Studios presents Daredevil, in which longtime rivals Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox, and Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio, try to leave behind their darker alter egos to serve the people of New York, only to have their pasts catch up to them. In the first episode of the series, we are reintroduced to the world of Daredevil. All right, Rob, in one paragraph, there's a lot there to unpack. First of all, longtime rivals. And Kingpin is trying to leave his dark past behind, and he actually wants to serve the people of New York. Now, I didn't read a lot of Daredevil comics. I mean, certainly not in the last 15 years or so. But somebody was telling me that there is a comic story about Mayor Wilson Fisk, that he was running to become mayor. Maybe they're going to take some influence of that and he's running for political office. Maybe it's a thing where he's actually now a good guy. He wants to help the people of New York or something like that, which again does not sound like the Kingpin that we knew from the Netflix series. With all the casting changes that we're being reintroduced to the world of Daredevil, what do you think about this little synopsis they just gave us? And based on the little they just gave us, what do you think it means? Where could you see this show going with that little intro?
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting ways. I mean, I've always liked the idea that you have these villain characters that suddenly want to make a turn, whether it's Lex Luthor becoming President Luthor or something like that. With Wilson Fisk trying to turn over a new leaf, we as the audience know, no, he's not. You know, at some point, but he's bamboozled the people of New York. He's convinced people to look at him in a different light. The only person who knows the truth is going to be Matt Murdock, who probably himself decides to expand his legal practice or do whatever, and no one believes him. You know, I love the fact that a hero is put into a position where it's, no, give Wilson Fisk give him a chance. Why not? You know, we're all progressive here. We all want to make sure that people get a second chance. And Daredevil's like, no. And behind the scenes, Wilson Fisk is discrediting Matt Murdock or doing whatever he's doing. And of course, we have to figure out a way is how is our hero going to find out or expose the truth and make sure everybody realizes that Wilson Fisk is not a good guy. Those kinds of stories I love. And I think they're going to go in that direction, and I'm all for it. I can't wait to see something like this happen. And I think, you know, the idea, the subtitle Born Again, like both of these characters are literally born again into different eras, different ways of doing things. I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. Again, it comes down to the writing. I think Daredevil by far was the most successful of the Netflix Marvel adaptations. Easily. By a wide margin. And I think that they have a lot to live up to. And that's the only That's my only fear, is that whoever they get to make, the people that are making the show, have a lot to live up to and big shoes to fill, and they won't be able to fill those shoes. But it's interesting that they have these actors coming back.
What do you think the chances are, given this synopsis, that they pull kind of the old trope of once rivals, now allies, and we end up seeing a Kingpin Daredevil team up against some bigger threat to Hell's Kitchen? I mean, much like the path they kind of took with Thor and Loki. Like at some point, like, okay, they're arch nemesis at one point, and then a little bit later they're fighting side by side.
Or the Punisher in Daredevil.
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of is a given, but could we see? I mean, I agree with you. I think the way to go and what they are probably doing is Kingpin, it's a very Lex Luthor thing, has the facade of being a changed man. He's still really a bad guy. But what do you think the chances are that they go, no, like Kingpin and Daredevil are going to become, I don't know. Do you think they could do that?
No, I think you're 100% right. Because again, the strange bedfellows trope always works.
Yeah.
You know, you put together these and it seems to work, but then ultimately we know it's not. But it's still fun to watch these two guys interact because, look, let's face it, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio made that show, and to watch those two actors go head to head is monumentally entertaining. And to watch them in some like Lethal Weapon, hey, we're working together situation is going to be a lot of fun. And then when it all gets torn asunder, it's going to be fun to watch too. Count me in.
All right, guys. With that all down, we are now going to go over and start taking your questions. There's two different sets of questions we're going to take. We're going to take questions from you guys who are watching live right now, have been sending in questions via the Super Chat feature. But we're also going to take questions from our beloved YouTube channel members who we ask every day to submit some topics for us to discuss, and we get through as many as we can. But before we get to those, we're going to take just a quick moment here and thank another sponsor of today's episode of the show, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. Signing your life away to a big wireless provider is kind of like being trapped on a roller coaster from hell. Sure, it looks like fun at first. They probably even threw in a free phone, but now you can't get off. Month after month of insane bills and unexpected thrills, like overages and surprise fees. If that sounds like your current big wireless plan, it's time to get off the ride with Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You guys know before I came to Mint Mobile, I was paying triple what I am paying now on the standard big wireless plan, and I will never go back. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped right to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's get over to your questions, shall we? We're going to start off with those of you who are watching live and sending questions. So, Jonathan, what do we got up here first?
First up, Damaris Love, who writes, now that the WGA has reached a new agreement and Marvel has pushed back some stuff, do you think they are getting back to quality content? Thanks.
I don't think one had anything to do with the other. I mean, look, listen, here's the thing. Every time they write a script and they go into production, they think they've got something great. I've told the story before, Rob, but it's true. I remember Clash of the Titans when they did the remake of it, right? I got my hands on the script about a year before the movie came out, and the script was great. I thought the script was great.
Yeah.
Because it played a certain way in my head. And then I saw the movie, and it was certainly the movie, but it just didn't play the same way. You always think you got something great. And listen, Rob, the problem with Marvel is that they spent so many years putting out great piece of content after great piece of content after great piece of content. It created this false impression that making great content's easy. Not one time did Kevin Feige, even if it was, I don't know, I really didn't like the Hawkeye series, right? Even in Hawkeye, I don't believe for one second that Kevin Feige ever looked at the scripts and went, I just don't think this is good. Make it anyway. I don't think that ever happened. I always think they think it looks great. So, but no, I don't think the writer strike and all that had anything to do with it. Do you?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think people don't understand. No one sets out to make something bad or mediocre. You know, everyone thinks they've got lightning in a bottle. Before they pull the trigger on anything, it's not just one person reads it. A bunch of people have read it, weigh in on it. You know, they rewrite, they make different concessions, or they try and make something as good as they can, and then they execute on that. And the funny thing is the problem is that we have many competing forces, especially at the top at Marvel or Disney, that want different things from these shows. You know, and so the stories that are being told are beholden to the fact that whatever Disney Plus needs at whatever time is going to shape what ends up getting made. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with making storytelling good.
Right. And remember, prior to the Bob Chapek era, Kevin Feige was still always going to be the final arbiter of that. He had final say in what was going to get made, what would go to Disney Plus, what would not, all that kind of stuff. And then when the Bob Chapek era began at Disney, Bob Chapek created entire new layers of management. Suddenly Kevin Feige was stripped of his authority, didn't have the final decision-making power of all that kind of stuff. And we'll see what happens now that he's been given that power again as we move forward. All right, what's next?
Zach with a $20 super chat.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate that, man.
Writes, hi, John and crew. I love Loki Season 2, Episode 1. I know you made a list of 5 things they need to do to make it good. What do you want to see in Episode 2 to continue the arc of this show outside of the 5? Bring on the filthy.
Yeah, you know what? I think I might still have this. Let me bring this up. Yeah, so before Loki Season 2, Episode 1 started, I did a video and I said, here's a list of the things philosophically, not narratively, but philosophically, I think this show needs to do in order to be good. And I said this. I said, they need to continue Loki's evolution. They need to establish Kang as the universe-made baddie. Don't get lost in time travel nonsense. Like, you're going to have time travel, but don't make it what sometimes Star Trek is guilty of. Oh, we got this problem. Recontratize the tachyon emitters to discharge and just get lost. Don't make it get lost in mumbo jumbo. Elevate the Loki character, because I think sometimes they're at risk of de-elevating the character. And then 5, lean into the Loki and Morbius dynamic. And then what happened? Episode 1 came out. Continue Loki's evolution. Can't say whether they did or didn't do that in one episode. You got to wait to see what he's like at the end of the season. But establish Kang as the main universe's bad guy. Kang didn't show up in this episode, but his presence was all over the episode. Check. Next, don't get lost in time travel nonsense. You know what they did? They made it Bill and Ted's. Whoa, maybe I'll go back in time and leave a guitar in the bush. Boom, there it is. They totally took that trope from Bill and Ted's, and I loved it because they didn't make the time travel stuff mumbo jumbo. They made it very kind of practical and very understandable by the audience. So check. 4th, elevate Loki. I think they did that in the episode. Check. Lean into the Mobius Loki stuff. They absolutely did that in the first episode. Check. I was thrilled with the first episode. But listen, I don't think these 5 points are just points for an episode. I think these are the points they need to follow for the series. And if they can do that by the time we get to the end of the season, listen, there's going to be 1 or 2 episodes that maybe Mobius isn't in as much, and that's fine. As long as overall they lean into these things, I think they've got a winner. Rob, I thought they got off to a pretty solid start. Is there anything particular you think they really need to nail philosophically for this show to be a success?
No, I mean, I think that you pretty much nailed it. Now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I liked that episode. I didn't love it, but I thought it was, like you said, foundationally, I thought it was pretty great. I thought it could move. Again, I thought it had pacing issues. It took a while to get started. I'm like, I get it. But all of those things were there. It's intriguing. I'm curious to see where it's going to all wind up. But I'm in, you know, and I think that, like you said, this has to do a lot of heavy lifting, more so than anything. They introduced Kang to the MCU in the Loki series in season 1. They really need to, if they're going to push forward with Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, whatever they're going to do, this show is where it's going to be the fulcrum to bring Kang back as a formidable threat, a Thanos level threat. Otherwise, I don't know if they're going to pull off a Kang Dynasty movie.
All right, what's next?
We got Jesse Price. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving, John.
It's not called Canadian Thanksgiving. It's called Thanksgiving. You have American Thanksgiving, but then there is Thanksgiving proper. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I think he was doing that for the viewers, so we're not like it's not.
That's true. But today, that is the real Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
What's
Interesting.
next? Yeah, for those who don't know, in Canada we celebrate Thanksgiving in October, which is the proper Thanksgiving thing. Pumpkins and all you see. All right, what's next?
All right, Shawnee Bear writes the Frankenstein movie, I believe, is based on Dean Koontz's series.
I don't know much about the background of what Del Toro
I don't know
is doing.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know. That would seem odd to me. I would think Guillermo del Toro would go with his own direction, but maybe.
All right, what's next?
What is it, Froderick Frankenstein?
That's Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Yes.
Fresh Comedy writes, I got a question. What's the best season of Supernatural? How do you feel about the character arc of Jack? Thanks for getting me into this great show.
Well, I can't spend the next 30 minutes doing a complete breakdown. Listen, there were stronger and weaker seasons of Supernatural. But for me, see, you might make an argument that season 3 or 4 might have been the best one. But for me, it was always just about the characters. I loved the characters. So even when they had, what was the name of the monsters, the black goo monsters from the Netherworld that came in? I'm forgetting the name of them. But anyway, in one of the later seasons, they had the black goo monsters, and I'm forgetting the name they gave them, came into it. And that wasn't one of their stronger narrative seasons, but I still love the season because for me, it was always more about the characters. I thought the Jack character, who, by the way, is in Gen V, he has very, very bad. Oh, Leviathan. Thank you. Rude in the live chat mentioned Leviathan is what they called them. Not the strongest season, but it's all about the characters. Jack's character, I thought, was a really interesting way to kind of wrap up the series. And I believe that his race is called the Nephilim, who is a child of an angel crossbreeding with a human. And he happened to be the child of an archangel crossbreeding with a human. And at the end of the series, Jack becomes God. But at any rate, I really did like the progression they took with him, but I don't really have a favorite season or least favorite season because, again, to me, it was just all about the characters. And as long as I got to go on a weekly ride with those guys, 1 hour a week, I was always super happy. All right, what's next?
A. Marcellus writes, will Robert do more segments on lesser-known comic characters with shows like Agatha coming out? It will help out the viewers who don't read comics, although we have a year before that comes out.
Yeah, well, there's a year. And on top of all that, here's the thing. A segment on Who is Agatha, which we kind of did a little bit when WandaVision was out, but really wouldn't be helpful at all because the Agatha on screen is a very, very different iteration of Agatha than was in the comic book. So actually, I don't know, Rob, it actually might confuse viewers a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say this, as much as I could do those, there are whole YouTube channels devoted to going into comic book history.
Comics Explained is a great
Comics Explained is great. Comic Book 19, Danica's whole series on the X-Men is fantastic. And there's just better, and I'll say it, there are better YouTubers than me to delve into comic history.
But we did little things like with Century, because not only do you give a little bit of a background, but then we also try to talk about how this could translate actually into a real practical Marvel.
I mean, that's something that's fun to do.
Yeah.
Where we could talk about how could they take these characters and bring them out into TV or movies. That'd be interesting.
All right, what's next?
All right, we've got the Jughead. He'll just gives us some support.
Oh, thank you, man. Just for sending to be support. Thank you, man. I appreciate that, Jughead.
And I think I skipped Tom Bombadil here. Hi, team. What do you think of Foundation Season 2? I liked Season 1, but thought Season 2 was on a whole other level. The last few episodes were truly outstanding.
I really liked Season 2. I really did. I mean, it's not Last of Us, it's not House of the Dragon, but I really enjoy this show. You know what? The concept that really got me at first, Rob, was the whole concept of the genetic dynasty. This whole concept of there's always 3, Brother Dawn, Brother Day, Brother Night, and then for one day, there's a Brother Dusk, or Brother Midnight, or Brother Night. That's what they call them. There's Brother Dawn, Brother Day, Brother Dusk, and then for one day only, there's 4 of them, and there's Brother Night. I love that. The way they expanded on that in Season 2, gave us the background of it in Season 2, and of course the robot. I mean, she's. God, I really loved it. I thought it was great.
The second season of Foundation was a marked improvement over the first season. Really, I'm surprised how good it really got.
All right, what's next?
Nat Reed's writes hot take, but Blue Beetle is my favorite DC film of the year. Yes, it's a classic origin story, but it's refreshingly low stakes and heart-filled fun.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't care what anybody else says. I thought Flash was a great movie. I really do. It flopped horribly, and we could do an entire series on about why it did. But I mean, Blue Beetle was an entertaining, fun little film.
Yeah.
That deserve. I personally didn't think it was like great, but I had fun watching that movie. And listen, I like the fact that Xolo is going to continue to play Blue Beetle. Now, how big of a role Blue Beetle is going to have in the new James Gunn universe, we'll have to wait and see. But I thought he did a really good job playing the character. All right, what's next?
Zach writes, I love Miles Teller as Reed Richards. I just thought the movie was bad.
There are several castings they did in there that I thought were again, filled it with great actors. I love Miles Teller. I don't know why he has a bad rap sometimes. I think he's a tremendous talent who's good in everything that he does. And I thought he was a really interesting Reed Richards if you were going for a younger Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Now, I used to say a lot before that Fantastic Four movie came out, Rob, that I was not looking for the Fantastic Four babies. I wasn't looking for the Muppet Babies version of Fantastic Four. I didn't want the younger version of Fantastic Four.
Right.
I wanted Fantastic Four. I wanted Reed with the gray in the side of his hair. You know, I'm starting to get that in my sides too. I wanted adults. I wanted grown-ups. But Miles is great. And you know what? We all thought that movie was going to be horrible. But I still remember, and I've told this story before, but me and Harloff we got invited to go to the Fox lot and watch an advanced screening of Fantastic Four. And we all thought it was going to be terrible. And I still remember somewhere near the half-hour mark, Christian and I turned to each other looking confused, and we said, this actually isn't that bad. And the first act of that movie is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And then it just went to crap after all that. I mean, which was too bad. I don't know. What did you think about that Fantastic Four?
Well, I felt the same way. I mean, it started promisingly enough, and then it kind of went off the rails. It seemed to me, studio interference, whatever happened, that they lost faith in the movie that they were making for whatever reason. And then you had a bunch of voices come in and try and change things, and then it was like nonsensical. Like, what is this? It was really odd, actually. Of all the comic book movies, it seemed the experience of watching it was strange because it almost reached a point where you could see where this change happened. Where like Josh Trank they didn't get to shoot what they needed. They had to fix things in post.
Listen, there is, I don't know if there's a term that's more widely misunderstood than studio interference, because that term means different things to different people.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we want you to use this character instead of this character. And people will go, studio interference. But man, when you talk to Josh Trank and you find out what went on with that Fantastic Four movie, that was studio interference. Like, that was like nothing I'd ever heard of before.
Yep.
Like, they completely sabotaged that movie. I mean, clearly they thought they were saving the movie, but Fox completely sabotaged that movie. I'm not necessarily saying that Trank's pure version would have been awesome. We'll never know. But woo, after I heard the story about everything that went on, I was like, holy crap. See, that is studio interference, not, hey, we got a note from the studio.
Right.
That's a little bit differently. All right. Is it time to move on to our channel members?
Yep.
All right. We were a little bit short on time because we had like 7 topics today, but let's get through as many of the channel member questions as we can. What do we got up first?
Amin writes, happy Thanksgiving, John.
Thank
Thank
you.
you and the crew for everything you guys do. Love and appreciate you all. I'm currently in Cancun, Mexico, enjoying the beautiful weather. Hope you all have a fantastic day.
Well, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving, proper Thanksgiving to all of you guys watching the show today. All right. What's next?
Kevin just simply asks, hey, John and crew, what are your favorite Italian restaurants in LA?
Ooh.
Mine was in Burbank, Tony's Bella Vista, but it's gone now.
Oh, I love Tony's.
Yeah, and then I used to love Vitello's in Studio City. That's where Robert Blake's ex-wife was famously murdered outside of. They actually had a menu item that said like
When
all
did
of Robert
Tony's
Blake.
Bella Vista disappear?
A couple of years ago,
They had deep fried pepperoni
right before
pizza.
during the pandemic.
You know what was my favorite? And it's weird because it would not strike you as such. It was right across from our offices at AMC. It was Market City Cafe. They had the most authentic tasting, because I grew up with my nonna making handmade, homemade pasta in the kitchen, all that kind of stuff. I remember their food was like the most reminiscent of what my grandmother used to make. I used to love that. And it closed down also. All right, what's next?
Red Run Real Talk writes, "Hey, Campea crew, have any of you seen Lupin on Netflix? I've loved the series, but in classic Netflix fashion, I never know when the next season drops until I stumble upon it on the site. If you haven't watched it, it's a delightful take on Arsène Lupin, a story with a fantastic cast."
I have never heard anything but great things about it. It's a French series.
Yeah.
So it's subtitles, which is going to turn a bunch of people off.
It's really good.
But I've heard nothing but great
You
things.
can watch it dubbed if you want.
Yeah, okay. I think I'd rather watch it subtitled.
Me too. It's really good.
But it's a detective
Well, it's
mystery solving thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it. I've seen trailers for it. I always thought I got to watch this thing. At some point I will. All right, what's next?
Callum writes, "Hey crew, I finally got around to watching Joyride, and oh man, John, you were right. The movie is hilarious. One of the best comedies I've seen in a long time. Do you think they'll get a sequel? Or is it not financially worth doing since it didn't make enough money? Thanks, Bring on the Filthy."
Here's the thing. It's not that the movie didn't make enough money. It's that it made no money.
Yeah.
Like, nobody went to go see this film, which is a crime. Because all of us, except for Jonathan, we were at the very first screening of it. I mean, they did an earlier screening at a festival, but in Las Vegas at CinemaCon, and they played this movie for us. And most of us were in tears. We were laughing so hard. Like, I can't remember the last, I think I have to go all the way back to 40-Year-Old Virgin to the last time I remember just pure enjoying a comedy as much as I love Joyride. But ain't none of you went to go see it. So I'm so glad you do. I remember, Rob, I turned around. I remember halfway through the movie, something happened.
They had to get Rob oxygen.
It might have been the tattoo scene.
Oh God.
And I turned around because you were sitting behind me. I turned around to look at you, and I've never seen your face more red. You were laughing so hard.
I'm honestly, I was kind of, not only did people not go that I thought would go, some of the people that went didn't think it was funny. And I was like, what? Maybe it's because I grew up, maybe nowadays the raunchy comedy is not in favor anymore. But I thought that film was absolutely hilarious. And I thought, we got Two Bottoms too is also hilarious.
Right.
And I would have thought, wow, what a refreshing twist to see raunchy comedies with female cast. And I thought the cast, by the way, was great.
Oh, they were fantastic.
They were great.
So good.
And there was so much funny stuff in it. And no one went. People didn't like, I don't know why.
And yet, we still get all these people who think it makes them look cool to go, Hollywood doesn't make original stuff anymore. Yeah, they do. You just don't go see it. They make some really fucking great original stuff.
Yeah.
And y'all just don't go see it. The movie's fantastic. If you guys have not seen Joyride, go see Joyride. Figure it out. Watch it at home. Watch it with some friends. You'll laugh your ass off. All right, let's take two more. What's next?
All right. Jay Superboy. "Hey, John, the other day when I said I was playing the Dark Urge, I wasn't playing as a bad guy. I always like good redemption story. My favorite character in the MCU has always been Bucky. What kind of character arcs you like? Keep it filthy. Keep it filthy."
I mean, listen, because my all-time favorite character in fiction is Boromir in Lord of the Rings, I love redemption stories. I really do. Now, for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, we're talking about the video game Baldur's Gate 3. Which I am absolutely obsessed with. Look, I'm not going to call it the greatest video game of all time. I need to play it for like a year, or at least have a year between when I played it and later to make. But I'm telling you what, it is one of the greatest video games of all time. It's just, it's so good that it's very much becoming a disruptor in the video game industry, because they don't have battle passes. And they don't have season passes. And they don't have fucking loot boxes and microtransactions and DLC.
Thank God.
And all this bullshit. They just made one of the greatest games of all time. A full, complete game that you pay for once and you get this full, awesome, incredible, ready to go, narrative rich, like amazing game. And if you guys have not checked it out, I highly recommend try. And you don't have to play Baldur's Gate 1 or 2. You don't have to at all. Those are great classic games too. But Baldur's Gate 3, one of the greatest games of all time. All right, one more. What's next?
Chef Rigo.
Chef Rigo.
Last night, I saw my Dallas Cowboys get the beating of a lifetime.
Yep.
Friends, family, and even customers made fun of me. But at least I have the John Campea show to help me get through this day. I don't think you're getting support from here either.
Do you?
Oh, no.
There will be no respite, my
I'll tell
friend.
you what.
Yeah. Sorry, Chef.
A lot of bad things can happen on a day that the Dallas Cowboys lose, and it's still a good day to me.
Oh, boy.
I remember, it was funny because Ann and I went out to a restaurant last night. And because first we finished watching San Francisco beating the living shit out of the Dallas Cowboys, watching Dak throw interceptions in 3 consecutive possessions. And I was talking to Ann, and Ann said the funniest thing. She goes, I think when I meet a new person, I can just ask them, are you a Dallas Cowboys fan? And if they say yes, I'll just say, then we can't be friends.
Oh, come on.
I don't watch football.
We can't be friends. It's a good day. You know what? I'm not the world's biggest Stephen A. Smith fan. I'm not. But every day that the Dallas Cowboys lose, I make sure I go and look up Stephen A. Smith's reaction to the Dallas Cowboys losing because he hates the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, there's
Technically, I would qualify because I'm not a Dallas Cowboys fan. I don't really watch football, so I guess I'd slip in there.
Yeah, just
technicality.
you'd be fine. You'd be fine. But yeah, woo, what a beating. Look, sports talk for a second, guys. Listen, I'll tell you what. The Kansas City Chiefs cannot beat the 49ers. The Philadelphia Eagles cannot beat the 49ers. Like the Chiefs, who've only lost once, and the Eagles, who have not lost yet, they beat the Rams yesterday. They're squeaking by with wins. San Francisco is beating the living hell out of teams. And like all due respect to Patrick Mahomes, who I think is the best quarterback in the league. But if I was a brand new GM and I got to have an expansion team and I got to pick one person to build my team around, if it had to be a quarterback, I go with Mahomes. But really, my first guy is Christian McCaffrey. That dude is a fucking living cheat code. His presence on a team fundamentally changes what an entire offense can do. And did you see some of the blocks that fool was throwing yesterday? He's one of the best receivers in the league. He's one of the best running backs in the league. And the dude can block. Yep. He fundamentally changes the entire disposition of an offense. And that's why last year when they got him, I went, well, that's just unfair. And if it wasn't for the fact that all their quarterbacks got hurt in the same game against the Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers would have won the Super Bowl last year. I'm not even a big San Francisco 49er fan.
Me neither.
But holy shit, they're good.
Yeah, they are.
And Purdy's not just a flash in the pan, man. That kid's for real. That dude's got Brady-like qualities. Anyway, sorry. I know when I go off on talking about sports, I can go for a while. So forgive me about that. And guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast. Thank you so much for being here and making this little show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in those questions, whether it's super chats or whether you're channel members and sent them in. Because number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported our channel as you did it. And all of us involved here, thank you guys so much for that support. A little bit later this afternoon, we got to make up for Friday. We didn't do an open mic on Friday. We're doing an open mic a little bit later this afternoon. Keep your eyes open for it. And of course, the John Campea Show will be back again tomorrow. We hope you join us again. So for Ray Ora,
Yeah, see ya.
Jonathan Voico,
Just got my Paw Patrol recommendation in the chat. Here we go. It's official.
woo, big day, and writer, director, producer, Robert Meyer Burnett.
We're a month away from For All Mankind Season 4.
Countdown has begun. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.